Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us for our second video in the Business Central series, Planning Your Move to the Cloud. In this one, we're going to focus on what to expect when you migrate to Business Central. Specifically here, I want to talk a little bit about the differences you might see if you're an SL or GP customer. So we'll frame this as a little bit of a shootout because we're going to go through it real quick. So let me navigate over to Business Central and we'll take a look at what some of these differences are. If you've watched the first video, you know that the look and feel of the product is different. What you see within it when you log in, the integrated Outlook mobile app, and just the overall style and features and user experience is going to be different. But here I want to get in this video a little bit deeper into some of the more structural differences within the products that you may be using today and what you might see when you move to Business Central. So let's go ahead and open the chart of accounts. When we look at the chart of accounts in Business Central, what you're going to see is a one-segment chart that is supported by financial dimensions. So one of the other things that's really interesting in here, and this will be a big difference for the GP customers in particular, the way the chart is structured is within ranges. And so when we look at something like accounts receivable in this sample setup, you see it's got a beginning and end total. And those accounts, the beginning and end total, really create the grouping of the AR accounts in this company. We post transactions to the accounts that are listed as posting accounts. So those are the accounts between 13,000 and 13,400. The interesting thing in Business Central is that these end total accounts accumulate the sum up, the balances of the accounts in the range. And of course, you can use these end total accounts on your favorite accounts page on the home page or within the financial reports that you construct. Now, just like GP and SL, when you take a look at the account master, you'll see some groupings. You classify balance sheet or income statement. You've got your asset, liability, equity, revenue, expense categories, and you can create these subcategories as well. One of the interesting things about this is out of the box, Business Central uses this to create default financial statements. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. But there's another piece to the chart of accounts that we have to explain. So the other piece I want to talk about associated with the chart of accounts is financial dimensions. And the financial dimensions allow us really to create a multi-dimensional framework of the data in the system. And in the example you're seeing here, I've got 5 dimensions created because that's what this business needs to report as well as budget their financial affairs. 2 of these dimensions are what we call global dimensions. And the global dimensions, which are customer group and department in this case, would appear on many of the inquiry windows in Business Central. However, the other dimensions can also be used for reporting. Now, these dimensions get a little sophisticated because we don't expect on every transaction that when a user puts in a transaction, they have to remember what dimension to use. In fact, there's intelligence built in. So on a customer, for example, if I open a customer record, I can actually associate dimensions with master data. And in this case, on the customer, you'll see the Trey Research is a medium-sized customer, and really the Department of Administration owns this customer. What does this actually mean? It means when we do a sales invoice, if we do a return, a credit note, if we do some activity that involves Trey Research, the resulting journal entry will automatically carry these financial dimensions. And this concept of default dimensions applies to customers, it applies to vendors, it applies to items and product codes, and of course, it applies in jobs. As well, we can put some settings on the chart of accounts on the actual main account to say, hey, every time you touch this main account, it must have a certain dimension. And that allows us again to ensure that we get the right dimensions on the transaction. I think the users from GP will really appreciate moving from the multi-segment chart of accounts structure that's there to the single segment plus financial dimensions. I think you're going to find it's much more flexible. Now, what does this mean from an output perspective? Well, one of the nice things in Business Central is that once you've built your chart of accounts and dimensions, there's default financial statements that are available here. And just clicking on preview, I'll open a default so that you can see it. And when this default opens, and we'll just zoom in, one of the things that you can see is right on the top of it, this financial statement is currently filtered on only one dimension. So if I go back and just say expand more, this is our concept of global dimensions, and department and project are here. I'm just going to go ahead and take that out and go ahead and rerun the financial report. And now you're seeing a comparative financial statement, more traditionally what you'd want to see. And of course, you design this because the chart of accounts is going to feed this. In fact, that's just the default. You have complete flexibility in Business Central to create your own financial statements, very similar to Management Reporter in a way. In Business Central, this is called account schedules, and we're going to take a look at that. I just want to explain to you as well that the search feature that I'm on, you'll see me using it all the time. It's such a popular feature. It's a great feature built in because it's Google-like, and you can just start typing and it's going to lead you to where you need to be. Account schedules, I've actually bookmarked it as a favorite, but I'll just click on it. And I just want to explain here that when you create a financial statement, you literally go in and create your row layout similar to what you do in Management Reporter. You create a column layout as well, and then put those two together and they become your financial statement. And in fact, if you wanted to look at any one of these, you can look at the formatted version, but you also have an overview here that's really popular. And the overview capability allows us to simply come in, look at our statement, and this gives us a preview. In an unformatted version, it just gives us a preview. But the nice thing about it is that you can drill down on this right from here to the underlying transactions. So the 350,000 in materials, if I want to see what it is, I'm actually drilling down right from the system view. There's the 350,000, and I can see it's coming from an invoice for a certain order. And this is a really great feature of the financial reporting. For those of you who are deep in Management Reporter, you haven't lost the tree concept here. It's a little simpler though, because where we normally use a tree, we now have a dimension filter. So if I wanted to see this statement, for instance, for a certain department, only administration, I would just click on that and it auto filters the report against that dimension. And you can see here when that panel's collapsed, it's administration. This is the time frame we're looking for. And here's my report. So again, this all comes together very nicely. It accomplishes the same thing with a similar type of tool. And this is a great feature of Business Central. Another thing that we've explained in a prior video that's very, very popular are filter list views. And the filter list views really come into play all over this application. For instance, I just clicked on vendor, and we're going to look at just a couple of things about the vendor list. And I want to explain a few concepts here. This is a list view, and list views we can create filters on by any of the columns that are in here, and we can save those, similar to saving a smart list. You also see, and you'll see this throughout this demonstration, there's fact boxes built into Business Central. So even though I'm on a list view for vendors, I actually have a Power BI report that shows up for Fabricam. I could take that out and expand that and see some different pieces of data that are there. I can also see key statistical data and history with that vendor right from here. If there's any attachments associated with the vendor, you would see the link or attachment or notes that have been made and the user that made them and the date that they made them. You can turn off the fact box simply by clicking on it. And this view now of my vendors gives me a little bit more. It's not just a list like we see in the on-premise products. It's actually showing me live data as well. So I can see the balances that are owed. I can change the sort on those. If I've gone ahead and customized the view, I may be looking at, hey, vendor and purchaser view, because there's a different view of this data I want to see. And that's similar to building out what we would call a smart list. And they just appear up here in my options. Now, if I want to go ahead and take a look at the vendor card, just so you get an idea, I'll open up DP Manufacturer in this case. And this is what your vendor card looks like, right? It's general statistical information over on the right-hand side in the fact box, like we've talked about. And you have the ability to come in, make document attachments here, add links, which would be like a URL, or add a note. And This is true on the vendor card, the customer card, the GL account card, the job card, the item card. This fact box piece is throughout the system, but users really like the fact that it's right on the main master data. And attachments, if they're attached here at the vendor record, they can flow through to a purchase order or a vendor invoice. And you'll also see when we get to those transaction documents that they too have the fact box and that you can add attachments at that place as well. So the vendor card is pretty straightforward. We have, we have the sort of key setup information, their vendor number, their name. We have their address and contact information, and then there's some settings for invoicing, payment, and receiving. When you actually look at something like a straightforward purchase invoice, and you can see in Business Central, you can do purchase quotes, which are like purchase requisitions, purchase orders, blanket purchase orders, purchase invoices, credit memos, returns, etc. If we take a look at a purchase invoice, just a straightforward purchase invoice, we'll go to this one for Graphic Design Institute. The way the purchase invoices work, again, when we open up the record, we have our fact box. Again, on this invoice, I could come in and add an attachment or note, and I can turn off the fact box if I don't want to see it. I can collapse the general panel, and really where we put data into invoices, whether purchase orders, purchase invoices, credit memos, sales invoices, sales credit memos, etc., is all done in this lines area. And lines can be a number of different types. They could be an item that you're purchasing, but if not, it may just be a GL account. It may be a GL account that we're just saying, hey, I've got an entertainment expense that I want to charge to our travel and entertainment account. I'll write a description, put the quantity on, and say how much it's for. And that's what we're being invoiced for. So it doesn't have to be item based. Once we're done with the document, we can go ahead and post it. And there's a nice preview posting feature here. When we run our preview posting, it will come back and tell us if there's any errors related to the posting date. And you can see I got a posting date error here because I'm using the demo data. But once it's done, we'll be able to go ahead and post that. And in fact, if you're used to batch-based entry, this list that I'm on right now of purchase invoices, again, it's a list view, but it's basically all my unposted invoices. So what I would do then is if I've got them ready and if I want to put approvals on them before they're posted, I can do that. We have an actual post batch feature where you can set up to go ahead and post a whole bunch in this list in a big batch-based posting process. Now, one thing I don't want to skip over is that when we look at an invoice like this, not only can we do a preview posting, the other piece built into Business Central that's everywhere is workflow approval. And so we create out of the box we create workflow approvals. There's a whole bunch available out of the box, and they're going to be in all the places you'd expect. You'd expect to see on a purchase invoice that you can set up and route this invoice for approval. That will prevent us from actually being able to post because we'll actually have to do an approval in advance. A user would be notified when they come into their home page in Business Central. They'll have their request to approve page, and there'll be items waiting here for them to approve, reject, or delegate. When we look at the area of sales, it's very similar. In fact, if you were to go look at the customer record, it sort of mirrors the vendor record, except it's used for sales transactions. And so when we click on a customer card, we can see again the name, some statistical data over here in the fact box. In this one, we have a picture. In this one, we actually have some links and attachments that are in here. And we can scroll down and there is some setup data relating to invoicing, payments, and shipping. The same way we would create a vendor purchase invoice, we can create a sales invoice. And when we look at a sales invoice, we can again come to our list view. We can see what unposted sales invoices we have out there and what the dollar value is. If I want to look at any of these invoices in particular, I'll go ahead and click on an invoice. And let's say, look at this one from a datum. We go ahead and open it up, and you can see in this one, we've actually used the GL account. So in this case, we're not invoicing the customer for an item. We could be. We're invoicing against a GL account for an event. $12,000. And there's a comment that there's a table being sold to them at this event, and we've added a comment line. So on this invoice, similar to a vendor purchase invoice, we can go request approval. Once it's approved, we can go to our posting area, and within our posting area, we can go ahead and preview the posting. You'll notice here as well, built into Business Central everywhere, is that the premise is that you're going to go ahead and post and send it, and you can send that, you'd set up to send it through email, and it would go ahead and email out this invoice. So the invoices work very similar across purchase invoices and customer invoices. One of the other small features I'd like to talk about with Business Central, which is a bit of a differentiator, is that Business Central has an entry-level CRM built into it. And it's built around the contacts. It's built around the contacts concept. And so in Business Central, we end up with contacts. Contacts could be leads we meet at a trade show, could be leads that come in through our website, could be leads we come in touch with. And we enter them here as a contact. They can inevitably be associated with a vendor or a customer. And when we look at a contact, one of the interesting things about the contact card is it'll actually tell you the number of opportunities you have open with that contact, their value. One of the other things that's really interesting about the contacts is you can create questionnaires. They call them profile questionnaires in Business Central. And it's sort of interesting. I created one here saying, hey, if we were meeting leads at a trade show, what would I want to know? I'd want to know their purchase time frame and how we categorize them as an A, B, or C lead. So right on this contact card, using the profile questionnaire, I can track these leads. And then likewise, you can build out opportunities, and you can build out you can actually build out campaigns in here as well and track the opportunities against a campaign. There's an opportunities page that you can see right away. Again, a list view, and it tells you actually what step in the sales cycle they're at. So this is a really great built-in entry-level CRM that will track lead to opportunity to close. It'll track the sales cycle stage. You can generate quotes against your opportunities. And of course, you can give views to your salespeople and sales managers to see how business is shaping up. This certainly is not all of the differentiators built into Business Central, but it's just some of them, and hopefully enough to get you interested in wanting to learn more. So if we've piqued your curiosity with some of the functionality you've seen in Business Central, let's talk a little bit about what it takes to get from GP or SL to Business Central. And there are two pieces here. I want to talk a little bit about the GP and SL migration tools, but I also want to let you know that the third video in this series deals with our structured migration assessment program. And this is certainly something that is worth watching because it provides really a roadmap to get from where you are today to Business Central, and it specifies things like the approach we'll take to understanding your needs through to costing and actually seeing your data in BC. So definitely worth watching. So let's talk about the migration tools, and the first one we'll speak about is GP. And here what I want to talk about is the fact that Microsoft's built a tool that helps us migrate data from GP 2015, 16, or 18 on-premise GP into Business Central Cloud. We install a utility and more or less press a button and move across data into the cloud tenant. The data that moves here is GL accounts and summary transactions, customers and open receivables, vendors and open payables, items and quantity on hand, and a whole bunch of supporting data related to salespeople, payment terms, segments, things like posting groups and your posting setup, as well, and importantly, some of your history related to sales, purchasing, and inventory. For SL, the same concept is true. There is a migration tool built to support SL 2015 and 2018 migrations from the on-premise tool to the Business Central Cloud. And here, the same concepts exist. We go ahead and install that product, and we essentially move data from the on-premise version to the cloud. And the same type of data would move with SL as compared to GP. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Hopefully we've helped to articulate some of the differences between GP and SL and Business Central. And of course, as I've mentioned before, please take a moment to watch the third video on the migration assessment approach that we're using to help customers move from GP and SL to Business Central. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you.